Welcome back. For those of you just following along, I am a therapist specializing in narcissistic and spiritual abuse. And today I'm going to start breaking down Mike Bickle's emails to Jane Doe as well as Jane Doe's husband. For this one, you can pause to read. This is an email that Mike sent to Jane Doe herself on October 3rd of this year. He apparently would send her coded emails and texts throughout the years. And there's actually a lot to get into here that I don't have time for in this video, but I do hope to circle back to what he did end up preaching because there are a lot of points to note about that. For now, let's look at this one. So Mike writes to Jane Doe's husband later in the day after Jane Doe's husband and Mike had a private meeting, just the two of them, and Mike says this. The subject line reads, "This is my last email on this, ! Sorry, it is a bit rambling because I am writing this real fast and I am in between a day full of meetings, I'm so glad for that disclaimer, Mike. The body of it says, this is my last email. I have been in and out of meetings since I left you at 10 a.m. today. I am sorry. I am not clear-minded right now and I am exhausted, but I am still swirling and hurting. I just wanted to clarify that when I wrote in my last email some hours ago saying this was my most painful day, 1, I do not mean painful because of her conversation with you. I am okay with you in the conversation. I trust you and your ways. So for a normal email, I would not be picking this sentence out to analyze, but I think it's worth noting that this could be an attempt to disarm or like a little bit of slight love bombing to tell to the husband, I trust you. I'm okay with you in the conversation. I mean, also, first of all, this is Jane Doe's husband. Like, of course, he's going to be in the conversation. That's a given. Anyway, number 2, I do not even mean because others, including me, would be greatly hurt if blah, blah, blah. We'll circle back to that. However, I cannot imagine the relational anguish and confusion it would cause in the multi-level, long-term, sovereign relationship with IHOP and blank. Okay, so it's redacted here. We are not sure if it is the sovereign relationship with IHOP and Jane Doe or the ministry. Jane Doe and her husband have a ministry that we will also circle back to that. It comes up later. All right, so we are already starting off pretty strong with some guilt tripping, some emotional blackmail, a little bit of veiled threats. Mike continues, what is painful is the thought of others being told a certain narrative that is not the narrative I believe that God has, and then they will pass it on. That would constitute the greatest betrayal of my life. A few things stand out to me from this sentence. The fact that the painful part is the thought of others being told, which is in bold there. And granted, none of us like the idea of information being spread about us that could tarnish our reputations. But of course, he pulls in God here, a certain narrative that is not the narrative I believe God has, and then they will pass it on. So Mike brings in God a lot. This is actually one of the times that I don't hear him saying directly, like, God said this. So what I see in this sentence, not only are we focused on what is called image management that comes up a lot when studying narcissistic behavior on individual and corporate levels. But in addition to that, now we are unsurprisingly pulling God into this. And this is just my personal opinion. I believe that Mike uses God as a point of triangulation a lot. Triangulation in narcissistic abuse can have a lot of different applications, but in this case, it is pulling in a third party who has the final say. So examples of that would be like, oh, well, my therapist said this, so you're wrong. Or, well, this guy who has all of this experience was saying this, and he's on my side, so I know more than you. In this case, it is the Almighty God, and God's narrative is the correct narrative. And Mike fears that other people are going to be told a narrative that is not God's narrative. It's just interesting to me that God's narrative and Mike's narrative they seem to always be the same. In addition to that, of course, we've got a little bit more playing the victim, even more motivational empathy, which, just to break down motivational empathy, it is essentially using someone's empathy against them to motivate them not to do the thing that they feel like they want to do. Things like, well, people could get really hurt if this would happen. Like, I would be so pained if this would happen. Okay, let's keep going. The greatest betrayal of my life from one of my dearest friends who I have trusted 100%, which I would like to call out love bombing here, simply because Jane Doe's reported that over all those years, he said, if you come out and tell someone, they will never believe you. And so if he ever really did trust her 100%, it's only because of the alleged fear that he instilled in Jane Doe for all of those years. Anywho, it would be a far worse betrayal than what Ernie Gruen did to me in 1990. Far more personally painful and relationally destructive. Oh my gosh, there's just like so much here. There's so much here. It is so bad. It is so manipulative. Like, I can't even believe what I'm reading, to be honest with you. I can't believe that he felt so emboldened to put this in writing. I realize that she has not betrayed me at this point, so forgive me for using such ugly language as betrayal. That's not the only thing you need forgiveness for, buddy. But even the chance of her doing this creates great pain in me, but not anger at her. Okay, pause. This is Mike giving the illusion that he has a very sensitive conscience and is very not easily angered. Forgive me for using such ugly language as betrayal. And I'm not angry at her by any means. But he is under scrutiny for allegations of very serious and very severe things. I mean, even this email is incredibly manipulative and spiritually abusive. So even if he is somehow innocent, which for the record, I don't think it's looking good for the home team, broski. But this email in and of itself is one of the most manipulative pieces of literature I have ever read in my entire life. Mike continues. Anger at her, that a most trusted friend did this to me at the end of my life. There it is. At the end of my life, after 40 years of being in prayer meetings, many hours a day, 6 days a week. Mike, what is your point here? Like, are you just bolstering your character? It just, again, it's giving like, don't come at the man of God in his final years at the end of his life, using words like betrayal and causing great pain. And throughout this, not just with this page, but with every page, I would like for everybody to take note of what is written in bold and what is written in red text, basically what Mike put emphasis on. So right now we have what is painful, others being told, the greatest betrayal of my life, betrayed, causes great pain in me at the end of my life. I don't even know what to do with all this. I told you about the prophetic dream 2 years ago that I had from Psalm 55, 12 to 14. I have prayed many times to bind the demonic powers that would energize this painful betrayal. Oh my gosh. So now we're getting into demonic powers. Bro, someone's husband has just come to you Never mind. We'll get to that. Welcome back. For those of you who are just following along, I am a therapist specializing in narcissistic and spiritual abuse. And today I am breaking down part 2 of the Mike Bickle emails. So we're starting right where we left off last time. First page, second paragraph from the bottom. I told you about the prophetic dream 2 years ago that I had from Psalm 55, 12 to 14. Which is about a betrayal from a close friend, someone who David used to pray and worship with. I have prayed many times to bind the demonic powers that would energize this painful betrayal. Now, okay, pause. There are several times that he alludes to, like, well, I'm not saying that you're the enemy or that this is a demonic attack. But then he keeps saying conflicting things like this one. So he's saying that he prayed against this betrayal and that it is energized by demonic powers. So I don't know. I mean, y'all do the math. In my last meeting with Ernie, before he spoke against me in 1990, he told me that he had a prophetic dream to expose me and that he had it 3 times. Of course, I had the Michael the Archangel encounter in September of 1984, and Michael showed me the rage of Satan striking me through Ernie when I, quote, went to the east. Wow. Okay, pause. Okay, some of you are not charismatic Christians, and so I feel the need to at least just like insert a little educational point about the charismatic Christian community. There is an emphasis on dreams and visions. And so then when you have leaders or authority figures who are sharing their what some would call divine revelations or insights, like prophetic insights, those experiences can become elevated in certain bodies of believers who are following said leaders. And so they might be weighing scripture through the lens of these prophetic insights and revelations and vice versa. And so I think personally, though nobody's asking, I personally do believe in prophetic dreams and revelations. And you know what? We can talk about that on another video at another time, maybe. But I say all that to build to the point that when we read this paragraph, I would just like to show this as Exhibit A of prophetic manipulation. Mike is about to go into a nugget about his personal revelation and angelic encounter versus Ernie Gruen's prophetic experiences and encounters. And I just want you guys to watch with me the subtle ways in which Mike elevates his experience and encounters over that of Ernie Gruen, to the point of referring to it as betrayal from Ernie, alluding to the fact that Ernie's not the one who is hearing from God. Mike is. Mike has the narrative from God. And so it's just very like grandiose. And hey, I'm all for people having confidence and like, you know, having a connection with the divine and having confidence in what they feel in their gut and their spirit. But weaponizing it in this way, it's inappropriate in the first place, but this is especially inappropriate to send to Jane Doe's husband, or anybody who is coming forward with allegations, them or their advocates. There also seems to be a lack of self-reflection on Mike's part in wondering, like, maybe I'm the one that's wrong here. Maybe I need to do some sifting, which is how I believe that all of us need to approach personal and extra-biblical revelation and prophetic insights and dreams, etc. That's just my 2 cents, but let's get back into this because I'm moving very slowly. I'm so sorry. It's coming off as much more of a warning of like, hey, don't be an Ernie. Don't think you're hearing from God and do the wrong thing, because it could have catastrophic consequences against the man who had encounters with Michael the Archangel and is still actively hearing from God. So I'll go over it now that you have those lenses. Just see what you think. Okay, back on track. Last sentence of the page. Thus, without telling that to Ernie, I just urged him to be slow and to be careful to hear God before he acted on those dreams, because I knew 100% that it was the rage of Satan breathing on his mind. How could you know 100%? Gracious. All right, next page, starting at the top. I went the east, I think he means to the east, in December of 1989, and the next month, Ernie attacked me publicly in January of 1990, just as Michael the Archangel showed me in September 1984. Mike, I don't know if I would call it as much attacking you publicly as exposing you, because from my understanding, Ernie had come to you multiple times before he had to go public, which is eerily reminiscent to what is going on right now. Anyway, in April 2023, the Lord made it 100% clear to me that I'm so confused by this sentence. I gotta start over. In April 2023, the Lord made it 100% clear to me that I again going to the east in May 2023 with 5 million praying for Israel, and the black horse would strike me again with the rage of Satan after May 2023. Okay, so not once in this email does Mike indicate that he has the awareness that, like, even if all of his encounters were real, that perhaps they were just a personal warning from the Lord that he needs to knock it off, and otherwise he's going to be exposed. Like, do the right thing. I don't know. That is my 2 cents. That is my opinion. I am not going to claim to be able to interpret all of Mike's dreams and visions and encounters with the correct lens, because I think that is what got us all into this mess in the first place, including you, Mr. Bickle. But one thing I want to point out here, not only is he basically solidifying his perspective by saying, like, I had foresight and knowledge that this was coming and knew 100% that it was the, quote, rage of Satan, like God told me that. But this is also a great time for a teachable moment about thought-stopping cliches. So thought-stopping cliches can be single words or phrases, very simple words or phrases that serve to put a stop to critical thinking and cognitive dissonance when it comes to certain issues. And so, they are kind of things like, that is the way we do things here, or, culture of honor. We hear a lot in some of these authoritarian, like heavy shepherding movements. But in this case, he brings in the black horse. So as an outsider, none of us really know the full weight of what the black horse means. But what I've come to find out is in Mike Bickle's movement, and I am going to call it Mike Bickle's movement. I am so sorry. At this point, I know that's going to ruffle some feathers, but I am where I am with this, and that is my opinion. The black horse in Mike's vision represented this attack from Satan, in which there, I guess, would be betrayal and, something public coming up about him. And so he, for many years, in my opinion, has been grooming his people to be prepared that something might come out against him, who he often equates himself to as King David, and the black horse as the demonic rage of Satan that is set out to destroy him. So he has been spending all of this time and effort and energy praying against that black horse. So talk about a thought-stopping cliche. Like, this is all but saying, this is the black horse. You guys are the demonic movement. And I think even Mike knew that that was such a low blow. So then he reaches in his pocket and pulls out the next narcissistic tactic that we're going to talk about, which is doublespeak. In the next paragraph, he says, I am not saying that Satan's rage is coming through, it's redacted, but that will be Doe or Jane Doe talking to you, but the hot fire of his demonic breath will come on the minds of some who will be energized to distort even what they hear from people quoting Doe, and then Satan will energize them to pass it to multitudes via social media, etc. Let's keep going. If this escalates, I am sure many will conclude Satan's rage was coming through Doe, in bold, but that is not my view. So doublespeak is saying something to provoke or antagonize and then saying something else to avoid responsibility for that. Baiting. I'm running out of time. Be back for part 3. All right, fam. Part 3 of unpacking Mike Bickle's emails to Jane Doe's husband. We are starting on page 2, third little paragraph sentence down, which reads, "If this escalates, I am sure many will conclude Satan's rage was coming through Doe, but that is not my view. But I would never say anything negative about Doe, but only words of blessing on her, and I would do the same even for those who share and distort her narrative. Satan's raging accusation is impossible to control because he has a supernatural ability to accuse by inflaming distortion and anger in the minds of people, even good people. I plead with you and Doe as 2 of my most dear, long-term, and trusted friends," and this part is in red, bold, "to ask the Spirit to show you his narrative of my life and what he sees and says about me, and ask him to give you peace or whatever." That tickles me. Peace or whatever. Next in bold, "I am sure he will. If me, you, or Doe miss him on this, it would be one of the worst decisions of our life. Yes, I include me in this statement. I have to see what he sees and only say what he says in this." Okay, first of all, there's just so much here that I'm like exhausted from just having read this far. So in trying to gather my thoughts, I will translate this for you. Mike is reminding Jane Doe's husband that Satan's narrative or raging accusation is impossible to control because he is so powerful and such a distorter. And so if this escalates and news starts to come out, Mike is posing it as though he's not worried about his own reputation and what could happen to him and his ministry. He is coming off as though he is more concerned that people are going to inflame and distort and attack Jane Doe and her reputation, viewing her as the black horse and demonically influenced, okay? And so imagine if you were the victim bringing this to Mike Bickle after decades of allegedly being told, if you bring this up and go public with this, no one will ever believe you. What I'm reading here is just a continuation of that narrative, but framed differently and very much over spiritualized. And again, he's doing the like feigning friendship thing. Like, this is not my view. I'm trying to protect you from the masses and what they are going to think and say about you. Veiled threats, basically like, if you go public with this, this will not go well for you. I'd also like to, again, note that one of the only reasons people would be so inclined to not believe Jane Doe when she's coming forward and not put Mike and his ministry under scrutiny really can be boiled down to the fact that for so many years, he has been heavily emphasizing this prophetic foresight knowledge of this betrayal and attack that would come against him and this ministry and movement. So here we are seeing more veiled threats, more intimidation, more narrative control, while simultaneously there is zero empathy that I can see here, zero accountability, zero integrity in the way that any of this is being handled. I mean, just continual manipulation and games, head games. And so since Mike put this sentence in red, I would like to pay special attention to the sentence about asking the Spirit to show you his narrative of my life and what he sees and says about me and ask him to give you peace or whatever. That in its very nature is insinuating that Jane Doe and her husband do not have the Spirit's or God's narrative over Mike and his life. And it also implies that if they would ask or seek God on the Spirit's narrative over Mike's life, that they would hear something differently. Additionally, this is all Mike's focus. Like, Mike is the main character, is all about Mike and his image and God's narrative over his life and his ministry. It is just, sickening. Okay, and then getting to the part of it being one of the worst decisions of our life. First of all, it's giving the illusion of like, hey, we're all on the same team here. I include me in this statement. And then again, we have some more triangulation of God and Mike inflating his own ability to only see what God sees and only say what he says in this, as though he is blameless and perfect in the situation in God's eyes. So honestly, for those of you who can't see it, I really don't even know that I can help you see it. But for those of you who can, just know that this is real stuff and there is real pathology behind an email like this. And if this email is the teeniest tip of the iceberg of what has gone on in the last 20 years or so, it's time for some exposure, in my opinion. Yes, I know that God moves everywhere. I have no doubt that there has been some wonderful fruit from IHOP Kansas City. And, in spite of Mike, God gives good gifts without repentance. And I know personally there are some wonderful people who have had amazing experiences through IHOP Kansas City. And at the same time, the bad would not be allowed to exist so hidden without the good propping it up. And yeah, we'll get to that. There's a little bit more to unpack here. So we've already got this very foreboding, warning of danger kind of tone, which I feel like, is kind of like Mike's brand anyway, laced with like, but we trust God. Anyway, if by chance she has whispered this story to any others, the evil result that the enemy wants in this can still avoid it. If she will only speak his narrative to any who might ask her something about this in the future by simply saying only what the Spirit told her, it might be something like, quote, I have peace that the Lord is blah, blah, blah. That sort of approach would cut off the black horse inflaming distortions and exaggerations and many false narratives in people's minds. Wow, Mike. So hopefully we can all see here that there is some heavy narrative control, and Mike is giving a very clear path, not only as to what the Spirit's narrative and what God is saying, but also exactly step-by-step prescriptive phrases that can help Jane Doe avoid these catastrophic consequences that would come if she goes public, which, I know I've mentioned this in previous videos I've put out, but she would not have to release this. That Mike would not be under this much public exposure had he/the IHOP Kansas City executive leadership team handled this appropriately over the last 5 weeks. Like they sat on this for a hot minute, waiting for IHOP to do the right thing. This was a last resort, my man. Then he goes on to tell Jane Doe's husband, I have not sworn before God to another person more than 2 to 3 times in 50 years. Some of y'all might be picking up the pattern already, but right now what we're looking at is not just love bombing, but we've got like an atomic love bomb. But I will do this one time and only to you. Before God, I assure that there is not one of these named ladies that I told that God showed me Diane would die so that I would blah, blah, blah with them. I cannot even type something as horrible as this. I mean, first of all, like, weird flex. But second of all, super evasive and elusive wording. I feel like Mike uses blah, blah, blah to kind of do the hand on the head, like, oh, I couldn't even fathom such a thing as dark and as terrible as that. And yet we've got multiple witnesses saying that you have. So please riddle me that. Okay, I'll be back for part 4.